and I urge the Minister to do the same.
Dan Carden.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker, and it's an honour and a privilege to follow my friend in this debate. Can I also congratulate the member for Carden and Halewood for her tireless campaigning on this issue, and what I thought was an excellent speech which covered the years and years of what families have been through. And of course, Madam Deputy Speaker, to pay tribute to the bereaved families and survivors, the campaigners for their courage, their tenacity, and their inspiring example to people fighting injustice everywhere. And I was only 2 years of age when Hillsborough happened, but I grew up with people who were affected by it, and I think we are a city influenced by it still today. And let me thank the member, the Right Honourable Member for Maidenhead, for being here today and for her continued support, which I know means so much to the families. And I hope that the Minister will take away the real feeling and passion that we've heard today. It's 32 years since the victims of the Hillsborough disaster left to watch a game of football and never came home. It's 9 years this week since the Hillsborough Independent Panel report exposed the gross negligence of South Yorkshire Police, who, instead of answering for their actions, sought to shift the blame onto those who they'd failed to protect. And we remember it as Truth Day. And it's 5 years since the inquest verdicts found that the victims of the Hillsborough disaster were unlawfully killed. And it's 7 weeks since Andrew Devine, who suffered life-changing injuries at Hillsborough, became its 97th fatality. We know now that witness statements were altered, the reputation of the victims was impugned, lies were fed to the gutter press in one of the most despicable cover-ups in modern history. And yet, the only conviction secured was for a health and safety breach resulting in a fine. No one has ever answered for the unlawful killing of 97 people. What kind of justice is that? What message does it send out to those who campaigned for decades, not only for truth, but for accountability? What message does it send to the bereaved families and survivors who were forced to bite their tongues whilst discredited slurs about their loved ones were repeated inside and outside of court? The horrific experiences they endured is all the evidence we need that the legal system in this country is broken. It is incapable of delivering justice for bereaved families and survivors, and it needs to change. I commend the tireless work of my honourable friend, the member for Garston and Halewood, to help deliver that change. And I'm proud to add my name to her public advocate bill, which would provide support for bereaved families at an early stage following a public disaster, to prevent them having to endure what the Hillsborough families have endured. Back in June, following the collapse of the recent trials, the Lord Chancellor and Secretary of State for Justice then told me in this chamber that the government would engage with the Hillsborough families and survivors every step of the way to review and propose changes to the law. And I hope the new Secretary of State will commit to do that as quickly as possible. The Public Advocate Bill has the support of the Hillsborough families, it has the support of survivors, including my honourable friend, the member for West Derby. So when it's brought back to the House of Commons next month, will the Minister guarantee that the government will not block its passage through Parliament? Together with this vital change, it's also time to take forward the work of the families, the former members for Lee, Andy Burnham, and my predecessor, Steve Rotherham, to introduce a Hillsborough law. This would make it a legal duty for public institutions to tell the truth in proceedings, investigations and inquiries, and to act with candour and frankness. Ahead of the inquiry into the government's handling of the pandemic, calls for a Hillsborough law have also been taken up by families whose relatives died due to COVID-19. So it couldn't be more pressing. During the last debate, the Lord Chancellor and the Secretary of State for Justice said that the government was considering the points made by the former Bishop of Liverpool, James Jones, in his 2017 report on the experiences of the Hillsborough families, including in relation to proposals for a Hillsborough law. So will the Minister tell us when the government will publish its response to the report, and in what timetable it will act on the report's recommendations? While criminal proceedings may have prevented a public response until now, the government has had years to consider the report's findings, and there is no excuse for any further delay. Our legal system must be fundamentally rebalanced so that the bereaved families and survivors have access to the same tools as the powerful and as the state. Let the greatest legacy of the decades-long fight for truth and justice following the Hillsborough disaster by the families and survivors and campaigners be the introduction of these changes to ensure their experiences are never repeated. Thank you.